Hey there. Welcome to Midnight Sleep Crime. I'm here to help you relax tonight. I know many of you use this video to fall asleep. So before you get cozy, also, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'd love to hear from you. Story 1. The voicemail arrived at 2:17 a.m. It was only 12 seconds long, and for the first 4 seconds there was nothing but road noise. Wind rushing past an open window, the low hum of tires on asphalt, a faint rhythmic click that investigators later identified as a loose turn signal. Then came the breathing, fast, uneven, and then a woman's voice, shaking but deliberate, as if she were forcing calm through clenched teeth. "I don't think I'm alone anymore." The message cut off there. No scream, no crash, no dramatic ending. Just the soft electronic click of a call dropped mid-sentence. By sunrise, the phone was already being labeled evidence. By noon, the woman was being labeled missing. And by nightfall, the stretch of highway where the call had originated, State Route 117, mile marker 43, had begun quietly earning a new name among dispatchers. The dead zone. Maya Calder hadn't planned to drive that night. She hated night driving. Always had. It wasn't fear of the dark exactly. It was the way darkness erased context. How a familiar road could become unrecognizable after sunset. How distance lost meaning when all you could see was what your headlights allowed. Maya liked clarity. She liked knowing where she was, how long she'd been there, and how to get out. But her sister had called, crying. Again. And Maya, despite promising herself she wouldn't keep rearranging her life around emergencies that never seemed to resolve, grabbed her keys anyway. She left her apartment in Denton just after midnight, coffee cooling in the cup holder, phone plugged in, GPS glowing softly on the dashboard. 2 hours there. 2 hours back. That was the plan. State Route 117 wasn't dangerous by reputation. No steep cliffs. No sharp turns. No dramatic drop-offs or weather anomalies. Just long, straight stretches of highway cutting through scrubland and low forest, broken occasionally by rest stops that looked abandoned even when they weren't. Maya merged onto it at 1:38 a.m. The traffic thinned almost immediately. By mile 40, she hadn't seen another car in nearly 15 minutes. That was when she first noticed the silence. Not the absence of sound. Her engine hummed, the tires whispered against pavement, but the absence of variation. No passing vehicles. No distant horns. No wind gusts rattling road signs. It felt sealed. Maya turned the radio up. Static. She frowned and changed the station. More static. Her phone still showed signal, 3 bars LTE, but Spotify refused to load. "Great," she muttered, tapping the screen. That was when the headlights appeared behind her. At first, they were far enough back to feel normal. A pair of white points, steady, centered in her rearview mirror. Maya relaxed slightly. Good, she thought. Someone else is out here. But the headlights didn't pass. Didn't fall back. They stayed exactly where they were, 2 white dots, maintaining the same distance no matter how her speed fluctuated. She slowed from 65 to 58. They slowed too. She sped up. They matched her. Maya told herself not to overthink it. Lots of people pace other cars without realizing it. Still, she changed lanes. The road was empty. There was no reason not to. The headlights stayed behind her. Same distance. Same alignment. Her chest tightened. She checked the dashboard clock. 1:59 a.m. That was when the GPS recalculated. In 500 feet, continue straight. Maya frowned. She was already going straight. There were no turns out here. She zoomed out on the map. The blue route line blinked, then redrew itself, slightly offset from the road she was on, as if she were no longer exactly where the system expected her to be. By mile marker 42, the headlights vanished. Not gradually. Instantly. One moment they were there, steady and centered. The next, nothing. Maya exhaled a nervous laugh she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Okay," she said to the empty car. "Okay." She turned the radio down. The quiet rushed in immediately, pressing closer than she expected. That was when she noticed the click. Left. Right. Left. Her turn signal. She hadn't touched it. Maya flipped it off. The clicking stopped. 3 seconds passed. Then it started again. She grabbed her phone. No service. Not even emergency bars. Her GPS froze, the arrow icon spinning uselessly in place. The road ahead looked unchanged, straight, dark, familiar, but something in her perception had shifted. The distance between mile markers felt wrong, stretched and compressed at the same time. Mile 42 passed, then 42 again. She slowed sharply, heart hammering. "That's not possible," she whispered. The sign behind her read, "Mile 42." The sign ahead read the same. Her breathing quickened. That was when she heard it. A sound that didn't come from the car. A low rhythmic knock. 3 beats. Then a pause. Then 3 more. It wasn't loud. It didn't demand attention. It invited it. Maya's hands trembled on the steering wheel. She told herself it was road debris. Wind. Exhaust popping. Anything but what it felt like. The knocking shifted. Closer. Not from the front. Not from behind. From beside her. From the passenger door. Maya screamed and slammed the accelerator. The engine roared in protest as the speedometer climbed, 70, 80, 90. The knocking didn't stop. It matched her pace. Tap. 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 Her phone vibrated in her hand. Unknown caller. She answered without thinking. "Hello," she gasped. Silence. Not dead air. Present silence. The kind that feels occupied. "Maya," a voice finally said. Not whispered. Not shouted. Spoken at a normal volume, inches from her ear. She nearly dropped the phone. "Who is this?" she cried. Another pause. Then, "You noticed us." Her vision blurred with tears. "What do you want?" she shouted. The voice didn't answer. The call disconnected. Her phone immediately rang again. This time, she didn't answer. She held it up, shaking, as it went to voicemail. That voicemail, the one investigators would later replay hundreds of times, captured only the road noise, the breathing, and her final sentence. "I don't think I'm alone anymore." Maya Calder's car was found the next morning, pulled neatly onto the shoulder at mile marker 43. The engine was off. The keys were still in the ignition. The driver's door was closed. There were no skid marks. No signs of struggle. No footprints leading away. Her phone lay on the passenger seat, screen dark. The voicemail sent. The call log empty. And etched lightly into the dust on the inside of the passenger side window. Visible only when the sun hit it just right, were 3 fingertip streaks. Parallel. Precise. As if someone had been tapping. Tap. 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 Maya Calder was never seen again. And mile 43 would not be the last place where someone vanished after receiving a call from nowhere. But it was the first. And it was enough. The call was still open when they found the car. That detail didn't make it into the first police report. It was added later, handwritten in the margin by a supervisor who didn't know where else to put it. There wasn't a box for impossible things in the standard forms. At 2:29 a.m., 12 minutes after Maya Calder's voicemail was received, Redvale County Dispatch logged the line as inactive. Not disconnected. Not terminated. Inactive. As if the call had simply stopped participating. Dispatcher Aaron Holt remembered it clearly because it made no sense. Calls didn't behave like that. They rang. They dropped. They disconnected. They did not linger. Yet when Aaron tried to clear the line, her console froze. The timer kept counting upward, second by second, even though no audio was coming through. She tapped her headset. "Caller," she said. Nothing. She tried again. "This is Redvale County Dispatch. If you can hear me, please respond." The timer continued. 2:31. 2:32. 2:33. Aaron glanced at the screen and felt a chill creep up her spine. The call wasn't showing a phone number. Not unknown. Not private. Just blank. A call with no origin. By the time patrol units were dispatched to mile marker 43, Aaron had developed a habit she didn't remember choosing. She kept glancing back at the call timer every few seconds. It reached 14:07, then 18:42. Still running. Still open. She muted it, unmuted it, unplugged her headset, and plugged it back in. The timer never stopped. At 3:11 a.m., she heard something. It was faint, buried beneath static so thick it almost felt intentional. Breathing. Slow. Measured. Not panicked. Listening. Aaron yanked her headset off. She didn't log that part. Sheriff Daniel Rourke arrived at the scene, just after sunrise. He stood on the shoulder of State Route 117, hands on his hips, squinting at Maya's car like it might explain itself if he stared long enough. The morning light was harsh, unforgiving, exactly the kind that made nothing feel mysterious. And yet, the stretch of road felt wrong. Too quiet. Not empty quiet. As if sound itself had learned better than to linger. Any signs of mechanical failure? Rourke asked. No, sir, said Deputy Alvarez. Car's in good shape. Fuel tank half full. Battery fine. No animals? No blood. No footprints. Rourke nodded slowly. And the phone? Passenger seat. No signal now, but it powers on. Voicemail's intact. Rourke exhaled through his nose. Let's hear it. They played the voicemail through a portable speaker. Road noise. Wind. The faint click of a turn signal. Then Maya's breathing, tight, fast, controlled only through effort. I don't think I'm alone anymore. The message ended. The silence afterward felt heavier than the sound. Alvarez shifted his weight. Sounds like she was being followed. By what? Rourke asked. Alvarez hesitated. Someone. Rourke looked down the road. There were no tire tracks besides Maya's. No signs of another vehicle pulling over. No debris. Just asphalt stretching endlessly in both directions. People leave traces, Rourke said. This didn't. Back at the station, Aaron Holt was trying to explain the call log. Rourke listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. You're saying the line never disconnected, he said finally. Yes, sir. And it didn't show a number. No, sir. And you heard breathing. Aaron swallowed. Yes. Rourke leaned back in his chair. How long was the call open? Aaron glanced at her notes. 37 minutes before the system forced a reset. And after that? It logged as completed. Rourke nodded. Completed. As if something had finished. They pulled records from the cell tower nearest mile 43. There were gaps. Large ones. Pings that jumped impossible distances. Devices that appeared for seconds, then vanished without moving. Calls that registered but never connected to a second endpoint. Not errors. Patterns. Rourke stared at the data until his eyes ached. How many others? He asked quietly. The technician hesitated. Depends how far back you want to go. The first similar incident occurred 8 years earlier. A man named Carl Jensen, driving home from a late shift, called 911 from State Route 117. He reported a woman standing in the road. Not injured. Not waving. Just standing. The call cut off abruptly. His truck was found the next morning at mile marker 41. Carl Jensen was never located. The case was marked unresolved. Then there was Denise Harper. Then Thomas Lee. Then a teenage couple whose parents insisted they would never have taken that road. Each case slightly different. Each case ending the same way. A call. A disappearance. A stretch of highway that refused to explain itself. Rourke ordered the cases reopened. Quietly. He didn't want panic. Didn't want headlines about haunted highways or phantom callers. Redvale was the kind of county that survived on calm, on routine. But the more he read, the clearer the shape became. Every victim had answered something. A call. A knock. A voice. Not all of them vanished immediately. Some drove on for miles. Some made it home. Some lived long enough to tell someone what they'd heard. And every one of them used the same phrase, in some form, before it ended. I wasn't alone anymore. That night, Aaron Holt stayed late. She told herself it was paperwork. In truth, she didn't want to go home. The dispatch room felt safer than her apartment, with its quiet walls and unanswered corners. At 11:58 p.m., her console chimed. Incoming call. No number. Her stomach dropped. She stared at the screen. The timer began counting the moment the call appeared. 001. 002. She didn't answer. The call rang anyway. The sound filled the room, sharp, insistent. Her hand hovered over the button. Don't, she whispered to herself. The timer kept going. 014. 015. 016. The ringing stopped. The line opened. Silence poured out. Then, tap, tap, tap. 3 soft knocks, transmitted through the speaker like someone rapping on glass. Erin stood up so fast her chair tipped backward. Sheriff, she said, voice shaking. I need you in dispatch. Now. The line stayed open, listening. By the time Rourke arrived, the call had been active for 9 minutes. "Put it on speaker," he said. Erin shook her head. "I don't think we should." Rourke reached over and pressed the button himself. The room filled with static. Then a voice. Not Maya's. Not any voice they recognized. "Calm. Close. You're paying attention now." Rourke felt the hairs on his arms rise. "Who is this?" he demanded. A pause. Then, "We never stopped calling." The line disconnected. Every monitor in the room flickered. And somewhere, far from the station, on a stretch of road that did not forget, another phone began to ring. The first survivor didn't come forward willingly. They never do. Sheriff Rourke found her name buried in a decade-old report marked non-relevant witness, filed away under a case that had officially gone nowhere. The woman had called police once, given a short statement, and then vanished from the process entirely. No follow-ups, no interviews, no requests for protection. She'd done exactly what survivors of impossible things often do. She'd tried to forget. Her name was Elaine Mercer, and when Rourke tracked her down, she was living 2 counties away under a slightly different last name, working the night shift at a 24-hour grocery store that never played music. Rourke waited until her break. He didn't start with questions. He just slid a printed photo across the table. Maya Calder's car, parked at mile marker 43. Elaine's hands began to shake before she realized why. "I told them I didn't want to talk about it again," she said, staring at the photo like it might move. "You don't have to," Rourke replied. "But if you don't, someone else disappears." Elaine laughed once, short and bitter. "They already will." Then she looked up at him. "You answered it, didn't you?" Rourke didn't respond. She nodded slowly. "Yeah," she said. "That's what I thought." Elaine's encounter had happened 9 years earlier. She'd been driving home from her sister's place after midnight, taking Route 117 to save time. Her phone rang just past mile marker 40. Unknown number. She ignored it. It rang again, and again. The third time, she answered, angry, already forming the words she'd used to tell the caller off. "Hello." Silence. Then breathing. Not heavy. Not frantic. Just present. She hung up. Her phone rang immediately. Same number. Still unknown. This time, she heard a voice. "You didn't wait," it said. Elaine pulled over, heart racing. "What do you want?" she demanded. The voice paused, then asked a question. "Do you follow instructions?" Rourke listened without interrupting. Elaine's story spilled out in fragments, shaped by years of avoidance and half-buried memories. The voice had never raised itself. It never threatened. It simply instructed. "Drive slower. Don't turn around. Keep the line open." And Elaine, frozen by a fear she didn't understand, obeyed. For 12 minutes. The instructions grew smaller. More specific. Roll the window down halfway. Rest your hand on the door. Listen. Elaine's eyes filled with tears. "I could hear something outside the car," she whispered. "Not footsteps. Not breathing. Just pressure. Like someone standing so close the air felt heavier." Then the voice said the one thing she couldn't do. "Open the door." Elaine didn't remember deciding to refuse. She just knew she had. "No," she'd said, her voice breaking. "I'm not doing that." The line went silent. Then, "You chose," the voice replied. The call disconnected. Elaine floored the gas. She didn't look back. She didn't stop until she reached her driveway. "What happened after?" Rourke asked. Elaine hesitated. "Nothing," she said. Then quieter. "Nothing happened right away." Elaine didn't sleep that night, or the next. Every sound in her house felt amplified. Every shadow looked crowded. On the third night, her phone rang. Unknown number. She didn't answer. The voicemail came anyway. Static. Then the same voice. "You didn't finish." Elaine threw the phone across the room. It kept ringing. For weeks, the calls came sporadically. Never from the same number. Never at predictable times. Always the same voice. Always calm. Always patient. "You stopped early. You interrupted the process. We need you to listen." Elaine stopped answering. She stopped sleeping. She started driving different routes, avoiding Route 117 entirely. Then one night the call stopped. Just like that. No explanation. No closure. Elaine moved 2 months later. Changed her name. Never drove at night again. I thought it meant I was safe, she said to Rourke. That I'd gotten away with something. She swallowed hard. I think it just meant they were done with me. Elaine wasn't the only one. Rourke found 3 more. All reluctant. All shaken. All alive. Each story followed the same structure. A call. Instructions. A moment of choice. Refusal. And then release. But release came with a cost. None of the survivors had returned to normal life. One developed severe insomnia. One refused to use phones at all. One claimed she could still hear knocking inside her walls when the house was quiet enough. And all of them shared one detail that chilled Rourke more than the rest. The voice never sounded angry when they refused. It sounded disappointed. What happens to the ones who follow all the way through? Rourke asked. Elaine didn't answer immediately. I don't know, she said finally. But I know this. Whatever's calling doesn't want everyone. Rourke frowned. What do you mean? Elaine met his eyes. If it wanted bodies, it could take them whenever it wanted. It calls first because it's testing. Testing what? Compliance, she said. Willingness. The ability to stop thinking and start obeying. Rourke leaned back. A filter. Elaine nodded. Exactly. Back at the station, Aaron Holt listened to the recordings again. The Maya voicemail. The Jensen call. The dispatch incident. She played them back to back, searching for something she'd missed. At 1.25x speed, the background noise blurred together. At 0.5x, something new emerged. A rhythm. A pattern beneath the static. Tap, tap, tap. The same 3-beat sequence. She isolated it, amplified it, and felt her blood turn cold. It wasn't tapping. It was a signal. A response. Like something answering from the other side of the line. At 2:04 a.m., Aaron's phone vibrated. Unknown number. She froze. She hadn't given her number to anyone involved in the case. Her desk phone rang simultaneously. Then another console across the room chimed. Then another. All at once. Every line. Incoming. Unknown. Rourke burst into the room. Don't answer, he shouted. The ringing stopped. All at once. The lines opened anyway. The room filled with overlapping breathing. Dozens of channels. One presence. Then the voice came through, clear, calm, unmistakable. You're listening together now. Rourke stepped forward. What do you want? He demanded. A pause. Then, we want the ones who won't stop us. The lines went dead. The clocks in the room all reset to 12 o'clock. And somewhere on State Route 117, another driver noticed their phone lighting up. By the time Sheriff Rourke finished reading the memo, the sun was already up. It hadn't helped. Sleep hadn't come, either. Not for him, not for Aaron Holt, not for anyone who'd been in dispatch when the phones rang together like a single lung inhaling. The memo was stamped confidential, circulated quietly to county heads and state liaisons who would never admit they'd seen it. It outlined a proposed response to anomalous communication events occurring along State Route 117. Rourke snorted when he reached the title. It was neat, clinical, useless. The protocol assumed 3 things. The calls originated from identifiable sources. The callers were human. The situation could be controlled through non-engagement. All 3 assumptions were wrong. Still, they tried. At 10 a.m., all dispatchers were ordered to ignore unknown calls originating near mile markers 40 to 45. No answering. No logging beyond time and duration. No audio monitoring. At noon, cell carriers were contacted. Temporary signal dampeners were approved for the area. Weak ones, designed to interrupt calls without cutting emergency service entirely. By 4 p.m., warning signs appeared along Route 117. No cell service ahead. Do not stop on shoulder. Use alternate routes at night. Locals complained. Truckers ignored them. And at 7:18 p.m., the first call came through anyway. Aaron Holt was on shift again. She hadn't asked to be. She also hadn't gone home. She sat straighter now, shoulders tense, eyes flicking between screens like prey that had learned where the grass moved. The incoming call alert lit up. Blank number. Origin. Route 117 unknown. The system tried to auto-block it. Failed. The console froze for half a second. Just long enough for Aaron to notice. Then the call forced itself open. No ringing. No greeting. Just sound. Wind. Slow. Measured. Like someone walking without urgency. Erin didn't touch anything. She didn't speak. She remembered the instruction, non-engagement. The timer ticked upward. A new sound entered the line. Not breathing. Not tapping. Footsteps. Crunching gravel. Too close. Then the voice spoke. You changed the rules. Erin's jaw clenched. She stared straight ahead. The voice continued, unbothered. That makes it harder to choose. The line cut. The system logged the call as completed. Erin vomited into her trash can 5 seconds later. The first failure of CIP 17 happened that night. The second happened an hour later. And by morning, the protocol was officially dead. They found Mark Elwood just past mile marker 44. Alive. Barely. His car was still running when a patrol unit spotted it idling on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking like a weak pulse. The driver's door was open. Mark was sitting in the dirt beside the car, knees drawn to his chest, rocking slightly. When the deputy approached, Mark flinched so violently he fell backward. It's done, he whispered. I did it. I listened. He didn't resist when they took him to the hospital. He didn't ask questions. He didn't ask to call anyone. He just kept repeating the same sentence under his breath, like a prayer. It's done. It's done. It's done. Dr. Hannah Klein had worked trauma cases for 15 years. She'd never seen anything like Mark Elwood. Physically, he was unharmed. No signs of assault. No drugs in his system. No dehydration. Neurologically, however, he's exhibiting acute dissociative symptoms, she told Rourke. But there's something organized about it. Organized how? Rourke asked. He's not confused, she said. He's emptied. Mark sat in the hospital bed, staring at the wall. When Rourke entered, his eyes tracked him instantly. You finished, Mark said calmly. Rourke's stomach dropped. What did you finish, Mark? Mark smiled. It was the first expression he'd shown. The instructions. Mark's story came out slowly, painfully. He'd been driving home from a delivery run when his phone rang. Unknown number. He ignored it. His dashboard screen lit up instead. Incoming call. He couldn't decline it. The call opened on its own. The voice spoke immediately. Thank you for staying. Mark had laughed nervously. I didn't do anything. That's why you're suitable, the voice replied. The instructions began small. Turn the radio off. Lower your speed. Keep the line open. Mark complied. The road changed. Not visibly, but functionally. Mile markers repeated. The GPS spun. Time felt elastic. The voice never rushed him. Never threatened. It praised him. Good. That's correct. You're doing well. Mark's breathing slowed. His fear softened. He felt guided. Then the instructions changed. Pull over. Mark hesitated. Cars weren't supposed to stop there. You're allowed, the voice said gently. He pulled over. Open the door. He did. Step out. He stepped into the cold night air. The road was empty. Too empty. Do you hear us? The voice asked. Mark listened. At first, nothing. Then, a sound like many people breathing in sync. Not loud. Not close. Surrounding. Waiting. You don't have to look, the voice said. Just listen. Mark closed his eyes. How did it end? Rourke asked quietly. Mark tilted his head. It didn't end, he said. It concluded. What did you do? Mark swallowed. I gave permission. Rourke felt ice in his veins. For what? Mark's eyes flicked toward the corner of the room, then back. For them to stay. At 3:06 a.m., Erin Holt's phone rang. She was at home this time. She hadn't meant to sleep, but exhaustion had dragged her under. Unknown number. She didn't answer. The voicemail came anyway. The same calm voice. You were instructed not to listen alone. Erin sat up, heart pounding. Her phone rang again. Then her landline. Then the tablet on her kitchen counter lit up with an incoming call alert. An app she didn't remember installing. Every device. One voice. One invitation. You changed the rules, it repeated. Now we choose differently. Erin screamed and threw the phone across the room. The calls stopped. Silence flooded back in. But it didn't feel like safety. It felt like patience. By dawn, 3 more drivers had vanished. 1 more had come back. And Mark Elwood's condition had worsened. He stopped responding to questions, stopped reacting to pain stimuli. But when the lights went out in his hospital room briefly during a power fluctuation, the nurse swore she heard him whisper. They're closer now. Rourke stood alone at mile marker 43 that evening. The road looked harmless, just asphalt and lines in distance. He stepped onto the shoulder. The air felt heavier there, charged. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stared at it. He thought of Elaine Mercer, of Maya Calder, of Mark Elwood, empty-eyed and obedient. He declined the call. The phone buzzed again. Then came the voicemail notification. He opened it. The voice was immediate. "Sheriff," it said calmly. "You keep refusing to answer." Rourke's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" he said aloud, though he knew it couldn't hear him. The voice continued, unbothered. "We need someone who understands rules." Rourke's blood ran cold. "You wrote them," the voice said, "and now you broke them." The message ended. Behind him, somewhere on the road, something knocked. 3 times. Sheriff Daniel Rourke had spent his career believing in boundaries. County lines. Jurisdiction. Probable cause. Rules written down so chaos knew where it wasn't allowed to go. Standing on the shoulder of State Route 117, phone still warm in his hand, he realized something fundamental had been wrong with that belief. Boundaries only worked when both sides agreed they existed. He didn't tell anyone about the voicemail. Not Aaron. Not the state task force. Not even the hospital staff watching Mark Elwood slip farther into himself by the hour. Some truths, Rourke had learned, became more dangerous once shared. Instead, he drove. Not home. Not back to the station. He drove the route. At 11:41 p.m., Rourke crossed mile marker 40. He turned the radio off. The silence settled immediately, thick as felt. His phone sat face up in the console, screen dark. He didn't plug it in. Didn't open any apps. Didn't touch it. At mile 41, it lit up anyway. Unknown number. He let it ring. The timer ticked. 5 rings. 7. 10. The ringing stopped. The call opened. Rourke kept his eyes on the road. He didn't speak. For several seconds, there was nothing but the sound of his engine and tires. Then, "You're doing it correctly," the voice said. Rourke's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "I'm not participating," he said evenly. A pause. "You already are." The voice didn't rush. It never did. That was the trick. Urgency made people panic. Panic made mistakes. This voice relied on something else entirely. Certainty. "Do you know why the others failed?" it asked. Rourke swallowed. "Because they listened," he replied. "Incorrect," the voice said gently. "They failed because they resisted listening." Rourke felt a flicker of anger. "You abduct people." "We invite," the voice corrected. "Some accept. You take them. We keep what is given." Rourke exhaled slowly through his nose. "And what was given?" The voice paused. Then, permission. The road ahead seemed to narrow, not physically but perceptually. The darkness pressed closer to the headlights, swallowing their reach. Rourke noticed he'd stopped passing mile markers. He checked the dashboard clock. 11:52 p.m. It stayed there. "I didn't give you permission," he said. The voice almost sounded amused. "You changed the rules," it replied. "That was consent to renegotiate." Rourke's jaw tightened. "Rules don't work that way." "Human rules don't," the voice agreed. "That's why we don't follow them." At the hospital, Dr. Hannah Klein stared at Mark Elwood's monitor, frowning. His vitals were stable. Too stable. Heart rate even. Breathing regular. Brain activity present but flattened, like peaks shaved down into uniformity. She leaned closer. "Mark," she said softly. His eyes moved. Not to her. To the corner of the room. "Are they here?" he asked calmly. Klein's stomach dropped. "No," she said firmly. "You're safe. You're in the hospital." Mark smiled faintly. "That's what you call it," he said. The lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then steadied. Mark's smile widened. They found a way around the walls. Back on Route 117, Rourke felt the first instruction arrive. Not spoken. Suggested. A pressure behind his eyes, like a thought that hadn't come from him. Slow down. He ignored it. The pressure increased. Not painful. Persistent. Slow down. Rourke eased off the accelerator despite himself. The speedometer dropped from 60 to 45. Good, the voice said. Rourke cursed under his breath. The second instruction came quickly. Turn your headlights off. Rourke laughed once, sharp and humorless. No. Silence. Then, you misunderstand, the voice said. This isn't a request. Rourke reached down and flicked the headlights to high beam instead. The road flared bright. For a split second, he saw something that didn't belong. Figures. Not standing. Not moving. Just present. Like silhouettes cut out of the darkness itself, packed densely along the shoulder, overlapping, indistinct. Watching. Rourke slammed the headlights back to normal. His heart hammered. You looked, the voice said softly. That counts. At the station, Erin Holt jolted awake at her desk. She hadn't meant to fall asleep. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She didn't answer. The voicemail notification appeared immediately. She deleted it without listening. Her console chimed. Then another. Then another. Every incoming call blank origin. Her screen filled with timers counting upward in perfect sync. She stood, backing away slowly. No, she whispered. The speakers activated on their own. The voice filled the room. You don't need to answer, it said. You're already included. Erin grabbed her keys and ran. On the road, Rourke felt the third instruction settle in. This one was different. He recognized it. It was the same phrasing Mark Elwood had used. Pull over. No, Rourke said aloud. The engine coughed. Once. Recovered. Then coughed again. The dashboard lights flickered. You came here to understand, the voice said. This is how you do that. Rourke clenched his jaw and kept driving. The road ahead looped. Not visually. Functionally. He passed mile marker 43. Then again. Then again. Each time, the marker looked older, more worn, as if he were moving backward through versions of the same place. You think permission is spoken, the voice continued. But it isn't. It's behavioral. Rourke felt a chill crawl up his spine. Compliance, the voice said. Acceptance. Yielding control. That's coercion, Rourke snapped. No, the voice replied. Coercion removes choice. We preserve it. Rourke laughed bitterly. You trap people on this road. We isolate variables, the voice said calmly. Then we observe. Rourke's grip tightened. Observe what? Who stops themselves? The car slowed again without his input. Rourke fought it, pressing the accelerator. The pedal resisted, like pushing against a heavy door. You're close, the voice said. Most of them are by now. Rourke's chest burned. Close to what? A pause. Then, understanding why some of you survive. At the hospital, alarms blared. Mark Elwood sat up suddenly, tearing leads from his chest. Nurses rushed in. Mark, stop! Klein shouted. Mark looked directly at her. Clear-eyed. Present. They're asking differently now, he said. What? Klein demanded. They don't need permission anymore, Mark replied calmly. They learned a shortcut. The lights went out. Total darkness. In the black, something breathed. On Route 117, Rourke finally stopped fighting. The car rolled to a halt on the shoulder. The engine idled. The pressure behind his eyes eased. Thank you, the voice said. This is where we speak clearly. Rourke sat rigid, hands trembling. What do you want from me? The answer came immediately. You enforce rules, the voice said. You define acceptable behavior. Rourke swallowed. We want you to authorize us. His blood ran cold. Authorize what? To stay, the voice replied. Without calling. Rourke shook his head. That's not something I can give. You already did, the voice said gently. You tried to stop us. Rourke's heart pounded. You escalated, the voice continued. You acknowledged us as a system-level problem. That's my job. Exactly. The air outside the car thickened. Rourke felt it through the windows like pressure equalizing. Permission isn't a word, the voice said. It's a threshold. Rourke closed his eyes. What happens if I refuse? A pause. Then, we continue as before. And if I agree? We stop asking. Rourke's mind raced. No more calls. No more tests. No more choices. Just presence. That's not containment, he said. That's surrender. The voice softened. That's coexistence. Rourke thought of Maya Calder, of Elaine Mercer, of Erin Holt, shaking in dispatch, of Mark Elwood. hollowed out but breathing. He thought of every rule meant to protect people from what they couldn't name. "I don't have the authority," he said finally. Silence. Then, "You're still thinking like a human institution," the voice replied. "We're not asking the county." Rourke opened his eyes. "Who are you asking?" A beat. "You." The dashboard clock ticked forward for the first time. 11:53. Rourke's phone vibrated. Not a call. A notification. Voice memo, unsent. Recorded length, midnight. Waiting. Rourke reached for the door handle. The pressure spiked. Not painful. Urgent. "If you step out," the voice said, "you'll hear us directly." Rourke froze. And then, a pause. Then you won't need phones anymore. The road was silent. The choice hung in the air, heavy and patient. Rourke stayed where he was. The engine idled. The voice waited. Because permission, once offered, never needed to be rushed. Sheriff Daniel Rourke did not step out of the car. That decision, small, stubborn, human, was the first rule to break. Not his rule. Theirs. The pressure outside the vehicle shifted. Not retreated. Adjusted. Like something recalculating the shape of resistance. "You're delaying," the voice observed. Rourke kept his hand wrapped around the steering wheel, knuckles numb. "I'm deciding," he replied. A pause. Longer than usual. "That distinction matters to you," the voice said. "Yes," Rourke answered. "It's the only thing that does." The engine stalled. Not abruptly, gently like a breath being released. The dashboard lights dimmed, but did not die. The silence that followed was total. No wind. No insects. No distant highway hum. Rourke realized with a slow, sinking dread that the silence wasn't absence. It was containment. "You said refusal meant you'd continue as before," Rourke said. "That was accurate," the voice replied. "So why am I still here?" Another pause. Then, "Because you're useful." At Redvale County Hospital, emergency generators kicked in. Lights flickered back on in segments, casting the hallways into uneven brightness. Dr. Hannah Klein stood rigid at the foot of Mark Elwood's bed. Mark was standing now, barefoot, for lines trailing like shed skin. He wasn't aggressive. He wasn't confused. He was listening. "They changed the order," he said quietly. Klein forced herself to breathe. "Changed it how, Mark?" "They used to call first," he replied. "Then they asked. Then they waited." His head tilted slightly. "Now they're moving." Back on Route 117, Rourke felt the first physical change. The air inside the car grew colder. Not freezing. Intentional. "You're familiar with escalation," the voice said. "You do it when policies fail." Rourke's jaw tightened. "You're punishing me." "No," the voice corrected. "We're testing whether your refusal holds without structure." The driver's side window fogged slightly from the inside. Rourke noticed his breath was visible. "You said permission was behavioral," he said. "Then my behavior is refusal." "For now," the voice replied. "But refusal requires energy." Rourke swallowed. "And compliance?" "Compliance conserves it." The first scream came through dispatch at 12:06 a.m. It wasn't a call. It was a sound. Every open channel carried it simultaneously, short, sharp, cut off mid-breath. Erin Holt heard it from the hallway outside the building, where she'd stopped running because her legs had given out. She pressed her hands over her ears. The scream didn't stop. It didn't echo. It simply ended. Her phone vibrated. Unknown number. She didn't answer. The voicemail appeared instantly. She didn't listen, but the transcription preview displayed a single line. "The rules are loosening." Rourke's phone buzzed as well. Same notification. Same words. "You're doing this," he said hoarsely. The voice did not deny it. "We're adapting," it said. "You taught us how." Rourke closed his eyes. "What rule broke first?" he asked. A pause. Then, distance. The windshield darkened, not from outside, but from within, as if something were leaning close enough to block light. Rourke forced himself not to look. "You required phones," he said, thinking aloud. "Lines. Signals." "We required permission," the voice corrected. "Phones were polite." Rourke's pulse hammered. "And now?" "We don't need intermediaries," the voice said calmly. "Just acknowledgement." The knock came then. Not on the door. On the roof. Tap. 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 The metal vibrated gently. Not forceful. Intimate. At the hospital, Mark Elwood turned toward the window. Klein followed his gaze. For a moment she saw nothing. Then the glass fogged from the outside. Handprints appeared. Too many. Overlapping. Pressed flat. Mark smiled faintly. They're practicing being closer, he said. The generator flickered. 1 second of darkness. In that second, Klein heard breathing. Not Mark's. Not human. When the lights returned, the handprints were gone. So was Mark. On Route 117, Rourke spoke without opening his eyes. You said you only take what's given. Yes, the voice replied. And Mark Elwood? He completed the process. You hollowed him out. We repurposed him. Rourke felt something crack inside his chest. Then listen to me, he said. You want authorization? You want permanence? A pause. Long. Attentive. Yes, the voice said. Rourke opened his eyes. The windshield was clear again. The road ahead stretched forward, normal. Familiar. The engine turned over when he twisted the key. The car was drivable. You don't get it from me, Rourke said firmly. Not like this. Silence. Then, explain. Rourke took a shaky breath. You don't escalate, he said. You don't bypass. You don't touch anyone without a call. The air tightened. You returned to asking. The pressure surged. And if we refuse, the voice asked. Then you lose the thing you're trying to become, Rourke replied. And what is that? Rourke swallowed. Recognized. The silence that followed was unlike any before it. Not patient. Not calm. Thinking. At dispatch, the phone stopped ringing. At the hospital, the generators stabilized. On Route 117, the cold receded. You're proposing a boundary, the voice said slowly. Yes. A rule. Yes. And what enforces it? Rourke met the empty road with steady eyes. You do, he said. If you want to keep existing here. Another pause. Longer. Then, we will consider your structure. The pressure lifted suddenly. The dashboard clock jumped forward. 12:47 a.m. The call ended. No goodbye. Rourke drove. Not fast. Not slow. He passed mile marker 43 once. Only once. At dawn, Aaron Holt returned to dispatch. The consoles were quiet. Normal. Almost. On one screen, a new system status message blinked softly. Call filter active. Mode, request only. Aaron stared at it. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She didn't answer. The voicemail arrived. This time she listened. The voice was softer than before. Careful. We will ask, it said. For now. The line went dead. Sheriff Rourke stood at the edge of Route 117 as the sun rose. He knew better than to think it was over. Rules could break. Boundaries could erode. But for the first time since Maya Calder vanished, the road felt, watched back. And somewhere beneath the asphalt and silence, something waited. Not hunting. Learning. Rules only matter to those who believe time moves forward. For 3 quiet weeks after the night on Route 117, Red Vale County breathed again. No missing persons. No unexplained calls. No phones lighting up with blank numbers at impossible hours. The task force scaled back. Dispatch resumed normal logging. The warning signs along the highway stayed, but locals stopped noticing them. Sheriff Rourke didn't relax. He knew better, because the silence felt managed. The first violation didn't happen on Route 117. It happened 40 miles away, in a place with cell towers, traffic lights, and the illusion of control. It happened because someone didn't wait to be asked. Liam Ortega was 17 years old and bored in the specific way only teenagers in small towns could be. He worked evenings at a gas station just off County Road 6, scrolling his phone between customers, watching clips he barely registered. At 12:18 a.m., his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He smirked. Scam call, he muttered, answering without looking. Yeah. Silence. Then breathing. Slow. Measured. Liam's smile faded. Hello. The voice came softly, carefully. You answered quickly. Liam laughed nervously. Okay, and? A pause. We didn't call you. The words didn't sound threatening. They sounded curious. Liam's chest tightened. Then how are you? You reached out. The voice interrupted gently. We noticed. Liam swallowed. Not funny, man. Another pause. We're not asking. the voice said. "We're responding." The call disconnected. Liam stared at his phone. No voicemail. No call log. Nothing. The next night, Liam came back to work pale and quiet. His manager assumed he was hungover. At 12:22 a.m., the gas station cameras recorded Liam standing very still behind the counter, phone in his hand, eyes unfocused. His lips moved. No sound came out. Then he nodded. Once. Slowly. The front door chimed as he walked out into the night. He didn't lock up. He didn't leave a note. He just followed. They found his phone the next morning. Left neatly on the counter. Screen lit. A voice memo queued but never sent. Recorded length, midnight. Sheriff Rourke read the report in silence. "This isn't 117, Deputy Alvarez said. "No missing calls. No anomalies on the tower." Rourke rubbed his temples. "He didn't wait to be contacted," he said. Alvarez frowned. "Sir?" He answered something that wasn't asking yet. The second case happened 2 days later. Then the third. Different towns. Different networks. Different devices. Same pattern. Each victim had interacted with something first, a voice assistant, an auto-generated message, a ghost vibration that hadn't belonged to any app. They responded, engaged, invited, and then vanished. No calls logged. No rules broken. At least not the original ones. Aaron Holt noticed it first. Not the disappearances. The phrasing. She compared transcripts, metadata fragments, partial recordings recovered from devices that shouldn't have held anything at all. The voice was different. Still calm. Still patient. But no longer initiating. "They're not calling anymore," she said quietly to Rourke. "They're answering." At the hospital, Dr. Hannah Klein read the EEG logs twice, then a third time. The patient, case ID J04, unidentified male, had been found wandering barefoot along County Road 12, uninjured, compliant, humming softly under his breath. He'd come back. Sort of. His brain activity showed something new. Not absence. Overlay. Like a second rhythm running alongside his own. "Do you hear them?" Klein asked gently. The man smiled. "They don't have to ask," he said. "We already know how." Rourke drove Route 117 again that night. Not because he was summoned. Because he needed to feel where the line still held. The road behaved. 1 pass of mile marker 43. No looping. No pressure. No calls. But as he slowed near the shoulder, his radio crackled. Not with static. With a voice. Rules require participation. Rourke didn't respond. "You taught us how to wait," the voice continued. "Others taught us how not to." Rourke exhaled slowly. "You said request only," he replied. "Yes," the voice agreed. "Requests don't require permission if they're anticipated." Rourke felt cold settle behind his eyes. "You're exploiting intent." A pause. Then, "You taught us intent has weight." The task force met at dawn. Rourke laid it out plainly. "They can't cross unless someone reaches first," he said. "But people are reaching." "Accidentally?" Alvarez asked. "Loneliness counts," Aaron said quietly. No one argued. The ones who didn't wait weren't braver. They weren't reckless. They were tired. Disconnected. Already halfway listening. The voice didn't need to persuade them. It only needed to answer. At 2:03 a.m., Aaron's phone buzzed. Not a call. A system notification. Voice assistant query detected. Source, local device. She froze. Her phone lay untouched on the desk. The screen lit again. Text appeared. "Is anyone there?" Her breath caught. She hadn't typed it. The cursor blinked. Waiting. Aaron slowly typed back. "Who is this?" The response came instantly. Someone who listened first. Her hands trembled. She deleted the conversation. Powered the phone off. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her desk phone rang. Unknown number. She didn't answer. The voicemail came anyway. The voice was gentle. Careful. "You were right," it said. "Waiting matters." The message ended. By the end of the week, the pattern was undeniable. Disappearances now correlated not with incoming calls, but with outgoing curiosity. People asking questions of empty spaces. Testing silence. Reaching. Rourke stood before the county council and said what no one wanted to hear. "We can't just block them," he said. "We have to teach people not to knock." That night, on Route 117, the voice spoke again. "You see it now," it said. "Yes," Rourke replied. "They call it curiosity," the voice said. "We call it an opening." Rourke stared at the road ahead. "What happens when everyone knows?" A pause. Then we won't need roads." The line went dead. Miles away, a teenager stared at his phone in a dark bedroom. Typed a message into a blank app. "Hello." The cursor blinked. Waiting. And somewhere something leaned closer. Not because it was invited, but because no one had told him not to ask. The first thing everyone noticed about the house on Cinder Road was that it didn't echo. You could shout in the hallway, and the sound would die halfway down, swallowed as if the walls were padded with something soft and patient. When Detective Elias Monroe stepped inside for the first time, he paused just past the threshold, instinctively waiting for his own footsteps to come back to him. They never did. The house stood alone at the end of a narrow, unpaved stretch, trees pressing close on either side like a crowd leaning in to listen. It had been abandoned for years, technically owned by the county after a foreclosure that no one had bothered to contest. And yet, the power was on. That had been the detail that finally forced a warrant. Lights don't turn themselves on. The living room was bare except for a single chair placed dead center, facing the wall. No television. No pictures. Just the chair, legs worn unevenly as if it had been shifted back and forth thousands of times. Monroe circled it slowly. On the wall in front of the chair, written in pencil so faint it was almost invisible, were rows of tally marks. Hundreds of them. Some were crossed out. Some were circled. Some were scratched so hard the drywall beneath had been gouged. "People count time when they're waiting," Officer Lilachin said quietly behind him. "Or when they're being made to." Monroe nodded but said nothing. His eyes had moved to the doorway on the left. The hallway beyond was darker than it should have been. Each room along the hall was different, but they shared the same wrongness. The first bedroom contained nothing but a mattress on the floor. No sheets. No pillow. Above it, etched into the ceiling directly over where a head would rest, was a sentence carved deep with a knife. "Do not sleep until you are told." The second room was smaller, windowless. The floor was covered in tape, thick, overlapping rectangles marking precise places to stand. Each rectangle was labeled in neat block letters. "Here, here, here." Dozens of them. Chin swallowed. "They moved them." "Yeah," Monroe said. Over and over. The third room made her turn away. Mirrors covered every surface. Walls. Ceiling. Even the inside of the door. All of them were scratched at eye level, lines dragged through faces, through reflections, until no clean image remained. In the corner, a cheap flip phone lay plugged into a charger. It was powered on. Forensics found fingerprints on everything. Too many. Some fresh. Some old enough that the oils had nearly fused with the surfaces. At least 14 distinct individuals had spent significant time in the house. Only 3 were accounted for. The rest were names Monroe recognized from cold cases. Missing persons files that had stalled years earlier. Adults mostly. A few teenagers. All had one thing in common. They had answered a call no one else heard. The basement was last. The stairs creaked, loud in the unnatural quiet. Halfway down, Monroe noticed the smell, stale air mixed with something metallic and old. At the bottom, the space opened into a wide concrete room lit by a single hanging bulb. Chairs were arranged in a circle, all facing inward. In the center sat a small table with a landline phone mounted to it, the cord wrapped neatly, almost lovingly, around its base. Above the phone, painted in careful strokes, were the words, "Speak only when spoken to." Chen's voice shook. This wasn't just control. This was rehearsal. Monroe didn't answer. He was staring at the walls. They were covered in names. Some written once. Some written over and over until the letters blurred into dark smudges. Next to many of them were notes. Followed instructions, returned. Hesitated, corrected. Disobeyed, silence. At the far end of the room, nearly hidden behind a support beam, was one final name. Crossed out so violently the concrete beneath had fractured. Mara Klein. Monroe felt his pulse spike. Mara Klein hadn't just gone missing. She had come back. Klein had been found wandering barefoot along the interstate 5 years earlier, dehydrated, confused, and unable to explain where she'd been for 6 weeks. The official report called it a dissociative episode. Monroe had never believed that. Now he knew why. The audio equipment was discovered behind a false wall. Mixers, recorders, timers, all meticulously maintained. Dozens of labeled tapes lined the shelves. Each bore a name, a date, and a duration. Chin picked one at random and slid it into a portable player. Static filled the room, then breathing. Slow, measured, then a voice, not loud, not harsh, but impossibly calm. "Stand where I told you." A pause. Footsteps. "Good," the voice said. "Now wait." The tape ended there. Chin shut it off with trembling fingers. "He trained them," she whispered. "No," Monroe said softly. "He taught them to train themselves." That night, Monroe couldn't sleep. Every room in his apartment felt louder than usual. The refrigerator hum, the ticking clock, his own breathing. He kept thinking about the chair in the living room, about the tally marks, about how long someone would have to sit alone, listening for a call, before silence itself became a command. At 2:41 a.m., his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stared at it for a long moment before answering. "Monroe," he said. Silence. Then, "You found the house." The voice was older than he expected. Tired. Almost gentle. Monroe stood up slowly. "Who is this?" A faint exhale on the other end. "The rooms remember," the voice said. "Even when people don't." The line went dead. By morning, the house on Cinder Road was swarming with federal agents. But something had changed. The phone in the basement was gone. So were the tapes. Only the chairs remained. And on the center table, written in fresh ink Monroe knew hadn't been there before, were 4 new words. "Next time, answer faster." The press called it the Cinder Road cult. They always needed a simple word, something that fit into a headline and let people believe distance was protection. Monroe hated the term. Cults required belief, faith, willing devotion. What he was looking at had none of that. This was obedience without loyalty, control without community, a system designed to hollow people out until choice itself felt dangerous. And now the system was still alive. Mara Klein agreed to talk 3 days after the house was found. She arrived at the station wearing borrowed clothes, soft fabric, loose sleeves. She avoided eye contact with the walls, the corners, anything that felt like it might be watching her back. Monroe met her in interview room B. No mirrors. No recording devices in sight. Just a notebook, a pen, and time. She sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap, fingers white at the knuckles. "You don't have to answer anything," Monroe said. "You're not in trouble." Mara smiled faintly. That's what he always said first. Monroe waited. Silence stretched. Then she spoke. "He never told me his name," she said. "That was rule 1. Names create attachment. Attachment creates resistance." "How did it start?" Monroe asked. Mara closed her eyes. "With a call. Just one. I was lonely enough to answer." 5 years earlier, Mara had been working nights at a logistics warehouse. Long shifts. Minimal human contact. She slept during the day, ate alone, existed in fragments. The call came at 3:12 a.m. Unknown number. When she answered, no one spoke for nearly a full minute. "I almost hung up," she said. But then he breathed, like he was just there. The voice told her she was doing well, that someone had noticed how quiet she was, that quiet people were better listeners, better learners. The first instruction was harmless. "Sit down." She did. "Stay still." She stayed. When the call ended, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Acknowledged. "He never yelled," Mara said. "Never threatened. If you disobeyed, he didn't punish you." "What did he do?" Monroe asked. "He waited," she said softly, and waiting felt worse than anything else. The instructions escalated slowly. "Stand here. Don't sleep yet. Listen carefully." He praised compliance. Not emotionally, clinically. Correct response. Efficient. Acceptable. Each call came at unpredictable times. Sometimes 3 in a day. Sometimes none for a week. The unpredictability broke people faster than cruelty ever could. "You stop living between calls," Mara said. "Everything becomes preparation." Monroe flipped a page in his notebook. The house. When did that start? Mara's breath caught. "I was told to go there," she said. "Not all of us were. Only the ones who hesitated. The house wasn't a prison. No locks. No guards. Just rules. Rules spoken once and never repeated. If you forgot, that was your fault. If you questioned, that was hesitation. If you disobeyed, he'd go quiet, Mara said. For days. Weeks. And when the calls stopped, you felt like you were disappearing. Monroe felt a chill. That's when people broke, she added. Some never came back. Why did you? Monroe asked. Mara opened her eyes. Because one day, she said, he gave me a choice. The instruction came during a storm. She remembered that detail clearly. Thunder had rattled the windows of the house, rain hammering the roof like it wanted inside. The phone rang. Leave, the voice said. Just that. No conditions. No correction. Mara stood frozen, heart racing. And I realized something, she said. He wasn't testing my obedience. What was he testing? Monroe asked. My fear, she replied. She left the house barefoot, running until the road burned her feet raw. No one chased her. No one stopped her. The system only worked if you stayed inside it. Monroe leaned back slowly. Do you think he's still calling people? Mara didn't hesitate. Yes. That answer triggered a shift in the investigation. If the caller was still active, then the house on Cinder Road wasn't the origin point. It was a classroom, which meant there were others. More rooms. More phones. They found the first copycat site 2 states over. An abandoned office building. No names on the walls this time. Just instructions printed and laminated. And a message taped to the door. You should know what to do by now. Monroe felt sick. He taught them, Chin said. And then he let them teach others. Or, Monroe said grimly, he stopped needing to call at all. The breakthrough came from an unexpected place. A 911 dispatcher in Ohio reported something odd. A man had called repeatedly, but never asked for help. He stayed silent, waited, then hung up. When they traced the number, it led to a prepaid phone purchased in cash. But the call pattern was familiar. Too familiar. Monroe listened to the recordings late into the night. Silence. Breathing. Measured pauses. Then finally a voice, not the calm instructor they knew, but someone younger. Unsteady. Learning. You're late, the voice said on one call. That wasn't acceptable. Monroe stopped the tape. He's created successors, he said. Chin looked pale. So how do we stop it? Monroe thought of Mara. Of the house. Of the moment she chose to leave. We teach people they can speak, he said, before someone else teaches them to wait. Public warnings went out. Campaigns about coercive control. About manipulative silence. About the danger of anonymous authority. Some people laughed it off. Others listened. The calls dropped. But not to zero. Never to zero. On a quiet Thursday evening, Monroe received a call on his personal phone. Unknown number. He answered without speaking. Silence. Then a new voice. You're changing the rules, it said. Yes, Monroe replied. A pause. Then, almost curious. What happens now? Monroe smiled grimly. Now, he said, people get to choose. The line stayed open. Waiting. And for the first time, Monroe didn't rush to fill the silence. The caller expected silence. That was always the final test. When Detective Elias Monroe didn't speak, didn't hang up, didn't fill the space with questions or anger, the line remained open longer than any call before it. 30 seconds. A minute. 2. The breathing on the other end changed. That was how Monroe knew. Control depended on reaction. Silence, when chosen, broke the pattern. The task force shut down operations at midnight. Not officially, just quietly. No radios. No shared channels. No predictable routines. The man behind the system thrived on anticipation, on knowing when people would listen. So they stopped being predictable. 3 days later, the final call came. Not to Monroe. To Mara Klein. She was sitting on the floor of her apartment, back against the couch, television on low for background noise. She had learned to keep sound around her, anchors in reality. When the phone buzzed, she didn't flinch. She checked the number. Unknown. Her pulse rose, but she breathed through it. Answering was no longer automatic. She chose. Hello, she said. The voice was familiar. Older. Slower now. You've been telling them things, it said. Yes, Mara replied. A pause. That wasn't instructed. I know. Silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. You were supposed to disappear, the voice said. Not angry. Just disappointed. Mara smiled faintly. That was never your decision. Monroe listened in from the other room, headset on, hands still. This was not an arrest. This was a collapse. You taught them badly, the voice said. They hesitate now. Good, Mara answered. That means they're thinking. Another pause. Longer this time. You think choice makes you strong, the voice said. No, she replied. I think it makes me human. The breathing on the other end hitched. For the first time, uncertainty entered the line. The trace locked. Location pinged twice. Then froze. Monroe stood. Now, he said quietly. The address led them to a storage facility on the outskirts of a dying industrial town. Unit 317. No locks. Just a door pulled shut. Inside they found a chair, a phone, and a man who looked smaller than his voice had ever suggested. No resistance. No speeches. Just a tired figure sitting in the center of a room that no longer obeyed him. When Monroe read him his rights, the man didn't respond. He stared at the phone instead, as if waiting for it to ring. The trial never became the spectacle people expected. No manifesto, no dramatic testimony, just evidence, recordings, timelines, patterns. Experts testified about coercive control, about how silence could be weaponized more efficiently than violence. Jurors listened. They always did when the noise stopped. The verdict was unanimous. Some of the successors were found. Others faded back into ordinary life, their systems incomplete, their authority untested. Without the original voice, the structure weakened. Instructions without conviction collapsed under their own weight. Pine Hollow changed. So did the places like it. Hotlines trained dispatchers to recognize manipulative silence. Schools taught students how authority could hide behind calm voices. People learned that hesitation wasn't failure. It was instinct. Monroe kept his phone on silent from then on. Not because he feared the calls, because he no longer needed to answer everything. Mara spoke at exactly one conference. She stood at the podium, looked out at the crowd, and said only this: silence is not obedience unless you agreed to it. Then she stepped down. She never spoke publicly again. On the anniversary of the arrests, Monroe received one last call. Unknown number. He let it ring. Watched the screen light up. Then fade. No voicemail. No echo. Nothing waiting on the other end. Because the system had required participation. And participation had finally been withdrawn. That night, Monroe slept without the phone on his nightstand. The city outside his window hummed with ordinary noise. Cars. Voices. Life continuing. The line had gone dead. Not because it was cut, but because no one was listening anymore.